During the Middle Ages, Europe and the Middle East stood divided, Christian kingdoms in the west and Muslim states in the east. Tensions simmered between the two worlds, often erupting into open war. On the front line stood the Byzantine Empire, the last bastion of Christian power in the eastern Mediterranean. But in the 11th century, a new and formidable force rose from the steppes of Central Asia, the Seljuk Turks. After converting to Sunni Islam, they swept southward, conquering vast territories and building an empire of their own. In 1071, at the Battle of Manzikert, the Seljuks dealt the Byzantines a devastating defeat. Much of Anatolia fell into their hands, including cities like Nicaea and Antioch, both rich in Christian heritage. When the great Seljuk Sultan Malik Shah died in 1092, his empire began to fracture. Rival warlords fought for dominance, launching fresh attacks against the weakened Byzantines. Desperate and cornered, Emperor Alexius I Comnenus turned to the west for help. In 1095, he wrote to Pope Urban II, pleading for military aid, a call that would change the course of history. Pope Urban saw in this appeal a divine opportunity to heal the centuries-old rift between the Eastern and Western churches, to unite Europe's quarrelsome barons under one holy banner, and to reclaim the holiest city of all, Jerusalem, lost to Muslim rule for over 400 years. At the Council of Clermont, Pope Urban addressed a vast gathering of nobles and clergy. He urged them to take up arms, to march east and liberate the Holy Land. Then came his astonishing promise. Whoever goes to Jerusalem out of devotion alone, not for honor or wealth, shall have this journey counted as full penance for all sins. For Europe's knights, burdened by guilt from a life of bloodshed, it was an irresistible offer, a chance to redeem their souls through holy war. When Urban finished, the crowd erupted with cries of Deus Vult, Deus Vult. God wills it, God wills it. The Pope's message spread like wildfire across Christendom. Thousands of nobles, knights, and commoners alike vowed to journey to the Holy Land. They marked themselves with a cross, and in time would be known simply as Crusaders. Some sought glory or riches, but most were driven by faith, ready to risk everything for the promise of salvation. Yet the Pope's call also reached those it was never meant for. Inspired by a zealous French priest named Peter the Hermit, tens of thousands of peasants and townsfolk set out on what became known as the People's Crusade. In their fervor, many turned their swords not on Muslims, but on their Jewish neighbors. In the Rhineland, mobs slaughtered around 5,000 Jews, men, women, children, acts condemned by the church, but rarely stopped. By the summer of 1096, the People's Crusade, numbering between 20,000 and 40,000, began its long march east. Led by Peter the Hermit, they followed the Danube River toward Constantinople. But their journey was chaotic. Hungry, undisciplined, and poorly armed, they looted Christian lands along the way, even those belonging to the Byzantine Empire they were meant to save. When the ragged bands of the People's Crusade finally reached Constantinople, Emperor Alexius I Comnenus wasted no time in sending them across the Bosphorus into Anatolia, eager to be rid of the disorderly mob that had looted its way through his lands. Once in enemy territory, their fate was sealed. Lacking leadership, discipline, and supplies, the Crusaders were swiftly ambushed by the Turks. Within days, their army was annihilated. But soon after, far more formidable forces began to assemble for the true First Crusade. This time, Europe's great lords were coming, powerful men commanding their own seasoned armies. From Lorraine came Godfrey of Bouillon with his brothers Eustace and Baldwin of Boulogne. From France, Hugh of Vermandois, brother of King Philip I, Robert of Flanders, Duke Robert of Normandy, son of William the Conqueror, and the wealthy Stephen of Blois. From Provence, Count Raymond of Toulouse, joined by the Crusade's papal legate and spiritual leader, Edhemer of Lupuy. And from southern Italy came the fierce Norman warlords Bohemond of Taranto and his nephew Tancred. By early 1097, these contingents converged on Constantinople, forming a vast host, perhaps 60,000 strong, the largest army Europe had seen since the fall of Rome. Emperor Alexius had expected a few thousand mercenaries to serve under Byzantine command. Instead, he found himself facing an entire Western invasion. The presence of Bohemond, a man who had once warred against Byzantium, only deepened his mistrust. Still, Alexius played the diplomat. He offered the Crusaders money, guides, and supplies, but only after extracting solemn oaths of fealty. Each leader swore to return all former Byzantine lands to the empire, not to seize them for himself. Only then did Alexius ferry the Crusader army across the Bosphorus, into the heart of Anatolia. The Crusaders were a fearsome military force. Their armored knights, around 1 in 6 of their number, were unmatched in direct combat, but they now face a new kind of warfare. The scorching heat, the rugged terrain, and the deadly mobility of Turkish horse archers. Fortunately for them, the Muslim world was deeply divided. The once great Seljuk Empire had splintered into rival states, ruled by competing Atabegs who were busy fighting one another, and the Shia Fatimids of Egypt. None understood the scale or determination of this new Christian invasion. The Crusaders' first major success came at Nicaea. After a 6-week siege, the city surrendered, but not to them. Alexius secretly negotiated handover to his own forces, denying the Crusaders their plunder. It was a bitter betrayal that deepened the growing rift between allies. Undeterred, the Crusaders pressed on, marching in 2 great columns through the blazing Anatolian summer. Bohemond led the vanguard, while Godfrey commanded the rear guard. Near Dorylaeum, disaster nearly struck. Bohemond's force was suddenly ambushed by the main Turkish army. Outnumbered and surrounded, he ordered his knights to form a tight defensive line, while his infantry shielded the camp and non-combatants. For hours, they endured relentless waves of arrows and hit-and-run attacks. The Turks encircled them, raining death from every side. But Bohemond held the line, buying time. As the battle raged, Godfrey's column arrived, unseen on the Turks' flank. The terrain concealed their advance until it was too late. When the Crusaders charged together, their combined assault shattered the Turkish ranks. Panic spread and the enemy broke, fleeing the field in chaos. The Battle of Dorylaeum was a resounding victory. The road across Anatolia now lay open. At Heraclea, they crushed a smaller Turkish force, then split their armies. The main host continued east through the harsh mountains of Cappadocia, losing countless animals and nearly starving in the process. Meanwhile, Baldwin of Boulogne and Tancred, driven by ambition, turned south into Cilicia, seizing cities like Tarsus and claiming lands of their own. Tancred later rejoined the main force, but Baldwin pressed on to Edessa, where local Armenian Christians invited him to rule. There, he established the First Crusader state, the county of Edessa. By October 1097, the main Crusader army reached Antioch, a city of immense strategic and spiritual importance. But what awaited them was not triumph, but torment. Starvation, disease, and encirclement by Turkish armies would bring the crusade to the brink of annihilation. Only a miracle would save them.